Peace to the family. Today I want to address something that happened a few days ago. Today is June the 10th, 2025. But I want to address the commuting of Larry Hoover's federal prison sentence by the President of the United States. The man known as the chairman, or Larry Hoover, who is credited with being one of the co-founders of the Chicago gang, the Gangster Disciples, or GDs as they're commonly known in street nomenclature. For the record, I'm not gang affiliated, nor do I condone the actions of those that may be gang affiliated. This analysis is purely from a social perspective. All right. I've had a few days to think about it, and think about it from the different lenses that it asks us to socially engage. The first being, why would Donald Trump commute the sentence of alleged gang leader and someone that has been convicted of murder and running a criminal enterprise from behind bars? Okay. First, the man, Larry Hoover, has been in prison since 1972. So we're talking about approximately 50 somewhat years, 51, 52 years. Right? Those were state charges that he was on. He got some federal charges for running the enterprise in 1997. So we're talking about 28 years, somewhere around there. If my math is correct. Right? So Donald Trump is known to kick it with Kanye West. Kanye West has been a big advocate of Larry Hoover's call for clemency for Larry Hoover, right? So let's say Kim Kardashian also did the same type of prison reform work, right? So let's look at the whole notion of prison reform. The United States, out of all of the developed nations, has virtually the highest prison population in the world. Also is a big proponent of the death penalty. Death penalty is not used in the European Union. It's used in Southeast Asia, so-called Middle East, Muslim nations. But the United States, as being what we would say the most developed of nations, still uses the death penalty and high rates of incarceration amongst minority people. So, Larry Hoover was convicted of murder of a 19-year-old by the name of William Pookie Harrison. Right? How does his family feel about this? How does this affect Pookie's family? right? So let's just think about it. Life is about spiritual redemption. Larry Hoover's been in prison for 52 years. Many of those years he was locked down for 23 hours a day. 1 hour to get out and move around. That's inhumane by any standard. I would say that's inhumane. All right? But go back to Pookie's family. They'll never see him again. He never got a chance to live his life. He was slain when he was 19 years old. And now, the life of Larry Hoover is like a political football. Why is Donald Trump trying to do this? I would say, again, his friend Kanye West, again, as distractions for other things that he's miserably failing at as the President of the United States. And as a way to endear himself to a certain segment of the population, i.e., hip-hop age black men. Black men that associate with cryptocurrency and rockets and real estate, want to be real estate moguls. A way to deflect away from the other things that he's doing in terms of pro quos with the Arabs accepting jets and planes, meme coins, shaking down Ukraine for their rare earth materials. Not for 1 minute do I think that Donald Trump is concerned about the life of Larry Hoover. Not for nothing. All right, he has appointed a woman, Alice Marie Johnson, as his pardon czar. She happens to be an African-American female who Trump pardoned. Okay. A lot of the comments that I heard about the commuting and the possible clemency from the governor of the state of Illinois has been negative from the black community. He's a gang leader, he's not the same person as he was when he went in. 52 years, change is inevitable. Inevitably, you change, right? So, 52 years is a long time. I think that you can have some sort of rehabilitation and redemption. He taught himself how to read. Earned a few degrees while he was in there and denounced the gangster life. All right. But I heard all of these negative comments towards Larry Hoover, the chairman, in the sense of how much death and destruction he caused in the African-American community. But other people do not know that Larry Hoover, he met with some of the civil rights pioneers, right? He sponsored voter registration drives. And if you look at it, every group of people, Italian, Irish, Polish, have had some sort of organized crime syndicate that they turned into legitimate 9-to-5 political hustles, police department, fire department, different trades. So Larry Hoover had this certain sort of charisma that if he had been allowed to harness his charisma and become a leader of people and influencer of people, that was very powerful. And he had linked up with the likes of Jesse Jackson, all the Chicago guys. Even to my knowledge, he even supposedly had linked up with Dr. King, Dr. M.L. King, and Ralph Abernathy, right? So he had this je ne sais quoi that people just ultimately they try to shut that down. All right, but I want to think about it in terms of most of the people that are talking about he should rot, that he should have been killed a long time ago. Most of these people profess to be Christians, right? And I'm reminded of a few scriptures, such as the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he's anointed me to preach the good news to the poor and the captives and set the prisoners free, right? This is Jesus saying this. Are your values and your opinions congruent to Jesus, to Jesus Christ? I asked you the question about that. What I think is the book of John. It says, so if the Son sets you free, then you free indeed. Right? Maybe the Son that set that man free. You know, who are we? 52 years. I'm sure at some point you're going to have what Howard Thurman would say, you're going to have a couple creative encounters with the Spirit, right? With the Spirit of God. Okay? I think in the book of Galatians, it talks about standing firm. Standing firm in the truth. Standing firm in the Spirit. And to still be standing 52 years later, I think you've stood 10 toes down real hard and real firm. I'm an abolitionist. I like the term that Dr. Mark Lamont Hill puts out there. I'm an abolitionist. I think I became an abolitionist with the likes of a lady who was sentenced to death row in the state of Texas. It might have been the 90s. I'm not sure, but her name was Carla Faye Tucker. She found God. She found the Lord in prison. You know, I'm a spiritual person. I'm not so much of a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person. And one of them Bushes had a chance to pardon her, but they didn't. This was a white lady, so I'm not saying it's just because Larry Hoover is a black man, right? You know, one of the main priorities of counteracting white supremacy is standing for justice for all people, right? And then Stanley Tookie Williams came along, who had reformed his life. We're talking about the leader of the Crips. Arnold Schwarzenegger had a chance to pardon this man, commute his sentence, or just pardon him, take him off death row. Don't take his life, you know. It's just savage. It's pure savagery. Didn't do it. And everybody say, what about all of the lives that the Crips and Bloods have taken away? Well, let's just look at it as an individual thing about rehabilitation and redemption, right? I think when Jesus was accosted with barbarous and Jesus barbarous, and I think both of them name was Jesus that it was on the cross next to. But anyhow, between a thief and a murderer, they said, hey, which one are you going to let go? They said, no, we're going to, Jesus, you're going to die tonight, right? So what happened? You will even wear a cross on your neck. And you don't think about redemption of a human being who you could raise your voice to say, free this man, let this man, end his days in any redemptive quality, right? With that, I'm also reminded of a man, Jamil Alameen, who's suffering in Florence Supermax prison in Colorado. Kidney disease and diabetes. Free Imam. Let Imam come home and live out his days. Right? And one more biblical reference. What about Paul and Silas? Right? When they were locked up in, I think it was Philippi, one of those Greek islands or whatever, had an earthquake, right? They could have ran up out of there, but they stayed, right? What were they in there for? Think about these things. And I'm specifically addressing this to people who call themselves Christians, followers of Jesus, right? There have to be some sort of creative encounter, again, like Howard Thurman would say. I'm also thinking about Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman. And Howard Thurman theologically on my mind, right? A great mystic thinker in Christianity, right? So with that, I want you to dig into yourself and think about, what's best. Should this man continue to languish in prison, or should he be given a chance at some sort of redemption and to live life, on the outside? But again, I ask you to think about your professed religious beliefs or your spiritual ideals, or even how you view yourself through nature. All right, I've tarried on just a bit. So I'd ask you to like, subscribe to my channel. Help me grow my channel. If I was out here clowning and acting a fool, on some total debauchery, I'd have more likes and more subscriptions, But anyways, it's a catharsis for me to come here and speak sometimes on some of these present day issues, right? So I can get at the meat of, how I live and how I act. All right, so, just ponder this. Then I say peace.